We don't need cars from Canada. We don't need energy from Canada. We don't need anything from Canada.
Data centers and the AI boom drive energy demand. Key factor in meeting that demand is uranium. Our Pippa Stevens got an inside look at one of the early winners of the energy race, Cameco and its Cigar Lake mine in northern Saskatchewan.
The Canadian government has big ambitions to make this country a global energy superpower. It was one of the key themes highlighted in the meeting this week between Prime Minister Mark Carney and the country's premier.
Hey, welcome back to the channel. There's something happening right now that almost no one's talking about. A silent race that could reshape North America's balance of power. It's not about oil, it's not about cars, it's about something far more strategic: uranium. While Washington has been busy fighting tariff wars, a different kind of energy war has begun, one that could decide who controls the next century's clean power. The U.S. ban on Russian uranium has left its reactors scrambling for fuel, exposing a fragile supply chain that once looked untouchable. Meanwhile, north of the border, Canada has quietly positioned itself ahead of everyone else. With the world's richest uranium mines at Cigar Lake and McArthur River, Ottawa may be holding the one resource the U.S. can't easily replace. And when Mark Carney sat across from Donald Trump at the White House, the conversation wasn't just about tariffs or trade, it was about leverage. Because in this new age of energy politics, uranium might just be the most powerful bargaining chip left on the table. So here's the question. What if the real power shift in North America isn't happening in oil fields or car factories, but deep underground? Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that like button. A simple like helps push this video to more people who need to see it. And that's where the story takes an unexpected turn. Because while Washington is struggling to rebuild its nuclear supply chain, Canada already holds what America doesn't: stability, technology, and near total energy independence. Canada isn't just another supplier. It's the world's second-largest uranium producer, commanding around 15% of global output, second only to Russia. Nearly all of it comes from one extraordinary region, the Athabasca Basin in northern Saskatchewan, home to an estimated 1.5 billion pounds of recoverable uranium, some of the highest-grade deposits on Earth. What makes Canada's position even stronger is its unique CANDU reactor technology, which runs on natural uranium instead of enriched fuel. That single innovation frees Ottawa from dependence on foreign enrichment facilities, a vulnerability that continues to plague the United States. In 2023, about 85% of Canada's uranium production was exported, with shipments to the European Union soaring 306% year over year, reaching nearly $1 billion in value. Meanwhile, Canadian energy firms like Cameco and NextGen Energy have started signing long-term contracts with U.S. utilities, securing a stable flow of about 1 million pounds per year between 2029 and 2033. In other words, while America is looking for answers, Canada may have already built the blueprint for nuclear security in the 21st century. Still with us? Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's next. But for the United States, that same equation looks far more fragile. The ban on Russian uranium wasn't just an act of sanction, it pulled back the curtain on an energy dependence Washington had quietly lived with for decades. More than 90% of the uranium fueling America's nuclear reactors is imported, a staggering reliance for a country that prides itself on energy independence. Until recently, 1/4 of that uranium came from Russia, with most of the remainder supplied by Canada and Kazakhstan. Now, with Moscow off the table and global competition tightening, the gap between U.S. uranium demand and available domestic supply could widen to 184 million pounds over the next decade, roughly the equivalent of 3 full years of consumption. The situation is compounded by weak infrastructure. The only uranium enrichment facility in New Mexico has cut output by 12% since 2018, leaving the U.S. without the capacity to rebuild a self-sustaining nuclear ecosystem anytime soon. And as American utilities scramble for contracts in an increasingly crowded market, one reality is becoming hard to ignore. Canada has become the last geopolitically reliable supplier standing, predictable, stable, and just across the border. That vulnerability takes on an entirely new dimension when politics enters the equation. As Washington considers extending its 25% tariff threat to Canadian goods, the implications reach far beyond automobiles or aluminum, because Canada is also one of America's top uranium suppliers. Imposing tariffs on uranium would be the economic equivalent of striking at the very heart of the U.S. energy grid. Without an exemption, the price of nuclear fuel could surge, destabilizing an industry that powers roughly one-fifth of America's electricity and represents hundreds of billions of dollars in infrastructure and investment. Energy executives have already warned that supply disruptions could knock out as much as 10% of U.S. nuclear generation capacity, a blow that would ripple through utilities, industrial users, and consumers alike. Canadian producers, including Cameco and NextGen Energy, have reportedly paused plans for further expansion into the U.S., markets citing trade uncertainty and unpredictable regulatory risk. In other words, the very partners Washington depends on are hesitating, not because of capacity limits, but because of confidence. So when Donald Trump boasted of $17 trillion in new investment, many analysts pointed out the irony. Economic nationalism may be costing America its most reliable allies. And as one Canadian official, Dominic LeBlanc, quipped after the White House meeting, Canada will leave happy, a diplomatic phrase, but also a quiet reminder that Ottawa knows exactly where its leverage lies. While the United States is still scrambling to secure uranium supplies, Canada has already begun building the foundation for the next generation of nuclear power. In Ontario, the government has officially approved the BWRX-300 Small Modular Reactor, SMR, a joint project between GE Vernova and Hitachi, slated to begin operation by 2030. If completed on schedule, Darlington could become North America's first commercial SMR facility, a milestone that would mark a major leap in both technology and energy autonomy. Unlike traditional reactors that require years to build and massive upfront costs, these modular systems generate between 5 and 300 megawatts, offering a more flexible, scalable, and inherently safer solution for regional energy grids. To guarantee stability, the Canadian government has pledged $500 million to purchase enriched fuel from trusted allied nations, ensuring consistent supply for the SMR program while avoiding dependence on politically sensitive markets. But beyond the technical breakthrough, Darlington represents something much larger, a dual-track strategy. By pairing Western innovation with Canada's own natural uranium resources, Ottawa is positioning itself not just as a reliable supplier, but as a long-term architect of North America's nuclear future. Unlike the United States, which still tends to view nuclear power mainly as an energy source, Canada sees it as a multidimensional tool, one that blends economics, diplomacy, and global trade into a single long-term strategy. The foundation of that approach lies in the CANDU reactor, a homegrown innovation that allows Canada not only to export nuclear technology, but also to train engineers and technicians in developing countries seeking energy independence. This model has quietly expanded Canada's influence across regions that are often beyond the reach of traditional Western energy networks. Under Prime Minister Mark Carney's administration, the government has promoted what it calls a complete value chain, from uranium mining and refining to SMR development to technology exports. Each step reinforces the next, creating a closed loop that strengthens domestic industry while expanding Canada's diplomatic footprint. At home, Ottawa is supporting a decentralized nuclear network, enabling provinces such as Saskatchewan and Alberta to achieve greater energy autonomy through localized SMR deployment. These reactors are expected to become the backbone of Canada's green industrial base, powering sectors from mining and steel production to hydrogen manufacturing. The vision is bold but simple, to turn uranium into Canada's new energy dollar, a resource that generates both revenue and soft power, anchoring the country's role in the global transition to clean energy. As the world continues to obsess over oil and natural gas, Canada has quietly secured the fuel of the next century. Uranium is no longer just a mineral buried beneath the tundra. It has become a tool for shaping alliances, influence, and the future balance of power. The global uranium market is now splitting into two distinct blocks: the Western producers, Canada, Australia, and the United States, and the non-Western suppliers led by Russia and Kazakhstan. In that division, Canada stands out as the most stable anchor of the Western bloc, thanks to its predictable politics, environmental stewardship, and reliable regulatory framework. But this stability also highlights a looming risk. If Washington continues down the path of broad, indiscriminate tariffs, it could end up pushing the center of North American energy power further north, into the hands of a partner it once sought to dominate. In that case, the balance of energy independence, and perhaps even geopolitical leverage, may no longer rest in Washington at all. So as America talks about protecting its industries and Canada quietly builds the future of clean energy, one question lingers. Will the next great energy superpower in North America be the one drilling deeper into the ground or the one looking further into the future? Thanks for sticking around. If you found this valuable, like and subscribe to support more content like this.